Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to module 3. We're now going to continue along the same path we've already begun in the last module, which is looking at raw data and what it is about the market, or what dynamics in the market are actually causing price to move up and down. We only really began to touch the tip of the iceberg in the last module. Now, I'm going to go on the assumption, obviously, there may be some of you that got it, and great, congratulations, all power to you. But I'm going to go on the assumption that the majority of you are how I felt when I first started working in a professional environment, being shown this stuff. I was completely lost, guys. I didn't know what was going on. So I'm going to assume that in the last module, you had a ton of questions. A, don't get it, there's a lot going on, it's very confusing. B, don't quite understand why we're looking at it still. And C, maybe some fear stroke apprehension around, am I really going to have to spend the next several months like Envy did, staring at this thing with no charts? And again, you're going to be looking at that with some feeling of apprehension. So let's just clear some of those questions up. And firstly, no, you're not going to have to spend the next few months like I did staring at this thing go up and down. And there's actually one major reason for that. The major reason is that the landscape has changed, guys, in the last 10-20 years. There's a lot more algorithmic flow now, which is automated flow. Machines, in particular, big hedge funds have come into the space, obviously banks as well, and they're using automation. And what that means is that the speed of transactions, at least on a very microscopic level, is incredibly fast. So the competition has increased severely in that time frame. If you think about it, the smaller incremental moves, the tiny 1, 2, 3, 4 tick moves, which means that you're not going to be able to compete in that space anymore. In the past, human beings were able to do that because the price action was different, and it wasn't so erratic. That's A. And B is to do with these resting orders. So a lot of the resting orders, limit buys, limit sells, which we're going to cover again in a moment, because of this algorithmic flow, a lot of it is fake. So that doesn't mean it's not important for you to know about and at least have an understanding of. But in terms of actually gaining an edge and being able to make money out of it, it's going to be there 1 minute, gone the next. It's not really, in my opinion, something that's going to be helpful for you long term to be watching to develop an edge. So for me, and that's why I say, in my opinion, what we're doing here at G7FX is, again, my opinion, better than what you're going to get in a professional trading environment, because I have the experience of watching all this stuff over a long period of time, and I think I'm very well placed to tell you quite clearly and make that decision for you that, look guys, don't waste the next 6-12 months of your life watching this thing go up and down. However, in my opinion, the optimal time, at least spend 2 to 3 weeks doing it. Why is that? So this comes to the question of why. Why are we looking at time in sales, depth of market? Why don't we just jump over to the footprint, cumulative delta, volume profile, VWAP? So you know, guys, this is essentially my number one go-to tool that I use. I wanted to avoid the word indicator because it's not an indicator. It's a demand and supply representation tool, as I've discussed previously in some of my videos on social media, and I will continue to do so. But the thing is, to really understand what is going on in these tools, you have to understand the raw data. That's all it is. It's really as simple as that. And that is why we're doing it. So for example, we've already discussed, and this is why the first 2 modules were important, to understand the theory behind what actually is the data. So that's the exchange, that's feeding the data into your platform, feeding the time and sales, So what's actually happening is every time transactions are happening between institutions, individuals, and so on and so forth, obviously that volume is being recorded, right, at the exchange, and it feeds into your platform. Then it's building up over time, guys. So you can see it's creating a sort of profile. So there's no point me jumping straight to volume profile if you don't actually know what's inside this volume profile, what forms this volume profile. And that's why this is absolutely crucial. A, and then B is, I need you to understand why I'm only focusing on the actual transactions that take place, and I'm not necessarily looking at the intention so much. Now, without showing you intention and showing you aggressive transactions, which I'm using here, none of this is really going to make sense to you if I jump straight forward. So hopefully you understand why we're spending so much time looking at this. And then finally, really looking at it in a raw format gives you an appreciation for why the price ticks up, ticks down, has a quick surge down, has a quick surge up, because all this time you've been misled. You've been told, and I hate to say that, I know I said I won't talk about this again, but what you've got to understand is the whole incentive of the retail trading industry, including brokerages, is to get you to trade quickly, right? They want you to be able to have a quick tool that, no offense guys, but any child can put onto a platform and see a buy or sell signal, moving average, divergence, whatever that is. That's going to get you trading quickly, right? If you're trading quickly, your broker's going to make money. By having to do it this way, you can see it's a very slow process. In a professional trading environment, it could be 3-4 months before you're transacting. That's not good for your broker. That's going to put your broker out of business, guys. So you can see they're not incentivized to really force you to be in a position of having to educate yourself properly and give you the best chance of success. They don't make their money if you're successful. They make their money if you trade, you blow an account, you keep refunding, you trade more, get others to trade more, and so on and so forth. Induce some sort of gambling mentality in you. So that's why we're spending so long going through a lot of the raw data, because you really, to give yourself the best chance of really understanding these tools, and you may not believe it right now until much later, it's absolutely imperative that we cover this. So the final thing I really want to say is that again, a lot of you may be thinking, as I said, you're lost, you don't get what's going on. So what I'm now going to go and do is I'm going to proceed to show you the depth of market. So this is the depth of market, but we're going to build it up from scratch. So you can see here there's bananas, and I'm going to show you how this works in a real life example, a real world example, a banana market. And we're going to go through it in depth and in detail from scratch. So if you don't get it so far, you didn't get anything in module 2, I'm almost going to start as if you're starting from scratch in this module, so don't worry about it. So before we go on to the example, let's just have a look at a depth of market and remind ourselves exactly what the columns mean. And what I'd like to do at this stage is take the opportunity to use an analogy, because I've reviewed the last module, and I realized that actually, especially if you're new to this, without having some sort of analogy, it can get quite confusing around how these columns interact with each other. So basically, guys, what you've got to think of is the market in terms of two teams, right? Buyers and sellers. Buyers obviously want the price to go up, so they're in one team. Sellers want the price to go down, right? Pretty straightforward so far. Okay, so who's on what team? There's only one team, guys. Ignore the price for right now, we'll come back to it. So you've got the buying team here in blue, right? And you've got a buying team here in blue. So that's how you got to start to think of this. As we're going through the example, think of it like this. And then you've got a selling team here, and you've got a selling team here. So what do I mean by this? Okay, guys, let's say you're an institution, individual, you want to sell the market. Okay, you're in the sell team, right? So your incentive or your outcome that you want is exactly the same whether you're in this column or this column. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, how would you sell? So you can either place a pending order, right? In which case you can be passive and you can sit on the offer. That's what we call it in institutional speak. Now, what that means is, and I hinted at it in the last module, and that's why I wanted to do the last module, you'd essentially, now I said that these guys are going on the institutional platform. The reality is, it depends. In a proprietary environment like the one that we're going to be mimicking, they'll click this, they'll have their depth of market, they'll be trading directly on their depth of market, or they can use the chart or some other tool that they want to place a limit order. But essentially what the guy will do is he'll decide, or it could be yourself if you want to sell, that you can either sell immediately, right, or you can sell as a limit order, as a passive person. So there's pros and cons with that, obviously. What's the advantage of that? Well, the advantage is, would you agree if you placed, say this is you decided to sell 68 contracts in pound dollar at 128.77. Guys, the market has to trade up to 128.77 for you to get filled, right? See, this is you're familiar with. Don't get confused just because it's in a different format. You'll be familiar with this on a retail platform. It's exactly the same where you place a limit order. Now that could be a take profit, or it could be a new initiation of a position. Now let's just assume you're initiating a new position at 128.77, so it has to come up. What other option have you got, guys? Because what's the disadvantage to this? The market could just continue to go down, right? If it goes down, you're never going to get filled. So that's the disadvantage to it. Now, if you had a high conviction that the market was going to go down now and you wanted to get in straight away, what would you have to do, guys? You'd actually have to transact at the bid, right? You'd have to click sell right now. So you'd be in this column. So can you see, guys, you're on the same team. You've got to think of yourself as a team, as a red, almost like an army or a bunch of soldiers, basically, who are on the same team. And if you think of world wars in the past, or many battles that have taken place, this is a battlefield, guys, and you're on the red team. Whether you're in this column or this column, you want to push the blue team back, right? You want to push the blue soldiers back, the enemy. It's just a matter of deciding whether you're on the pending team, which is a bit more passive, so you could be at the back, or whether you're on the aggressive team. So as I talked about before, there's aggressors and then there's just the passive side, which is the intention. Now, this is a little bit more advanced, but important to note as well. So do you remember last time I said, in the example I gave in the time sales, I think there was some contracts here, and then that shut, as the market went down, it suddenly started to increase. Like, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it went from like 60 to 100. So what you got to understand, guys, is the blue team here, buyers, can see that, right? You and I, we can see that. If you can see that, that shoots up to 100, clearly in your mind, psychologically, and algorithms as well will be programmed to see this information. We'll be thinking, oh, the red army's just got stronger. Now, the amount of sellers has just increased, the army, the team, from 68 to 70. There's more of them. There's more pressure against me. So that may cause you to go on the sidelines. So this, you may retreat and you may decide, actually, I don't want to be in the market anymore. So that will cause that to retreat. So you can see why these resting orders from a psychological standpoint are very important. And that's why they're constantly being pulled and stacked and pulled and stacked, because there's game playing going on, guys. It's a poker game. Computers and institutions are constantly putting orders in, and as the market approaches, they may just cancel it to give the illusion that there's selling pressure, and then actually when they cancel it, the reality is they're probably on the long side. So there's a lot of games going on that's a little bit advanced, but because I understand a lot of you may be getting confused between the columns, I just want to sort of simplify it and get you to understand that, just changing the color here, guys. Just want you to understand that basically they're the same team. So no different to this side, right? So that's the red team selling team. Now imagine you had a long bias and you wanted to buy the market. Guys, you've got two options. The same as the red team, you're now on the blue team. You just got to decide which bit am I going to go on. But what you've got to realize is they're both pushing in the same direction. They're on the same team. In fact, it could be the same guy who just, for example here, bought these 3 contracts and is actually bidding for another 90. It could be the same person. So the reality is they're all on the same team. They all want the same thing to happen. They want the market to go up. That's how they're going to profit. So what are your two options? So to repeat, you can place a limit order, right? You can go into your MT4 platform. Now this is an institutional platform, or the depth of market. It's a futures market. So again, they can actually do it directly on here. They can click this area here and it will pop up. They can have a set amount. Now obviously I've preset at 6. You'll just automatically place 6 and that will move up to 96. So that's just a pending order, the same as what you would put in your MetaTrader 4 or your retail platform. And again, let's talk about the disadvantages and advantage of that. The advantage is that you're going to get a better price, right? Because if you go in the market right now, you're going to have to pay to get long of pound dollar 128.74. Placing an order, yeah, you're going to get a better price. But guys, what if the market doesn't sell off down to that area? You're not going to get filled and it's just going to go up without you. So that's obviously an advantage, and then that's the disadvantage. Now, if you've got a strong conviction, what you can do is what this person's done, is you can actually buy 3 from this person selling 27. So you're pushing against the red army. You're pushing them back. It's a battle, guys. And, you know, I keep using this analogy of war, but the reality is that is exactly what's going on moment to moment. And guys, the more buyers start pushing, the more the price goes up, demand, and that's what causes your price to tick up. So again, this may still be sinking in and it will make more sense when we go and look at a real example. But the reason I want to mention this is because what we're now going to go and do is I'm actually going to break this whole thing down to scratch, bare bones, and build it back up again. And I just want you to remember this, that these guys and these guys are one team. That guy, these guys and these guys are just one team. It's just the manner in which they're showing their position slightly varies. So let's go on and look at an example in the fruit and vegetable market. So you can see here I've got a box of bananas, and this is actually the fruit and vegetable market, and it works in exactly the same way. And that's going to make sense when I actually go through the example in a moment. But what I just want to quickly do before I go into that example, because I don't want to skip back to this, is because obviously my job is to show you what is life like in a professional trading firm. I need to give you the best representation of what is exactly you'll be doing in a professional trading firm. So basically, guys, what would happen is once you're introduced to the depth of market, and you know, like I said, there's a blue team against a red team, but this is happening across markets, guys. Look, pound dollar, euro dollar, the S&P 500, these are the treasuries. Each market, like I said, you're not given charts. You'll have multiple screens, and this is what you'll be watching all day. You'll be watching this go up and down. But the reality is, guys, and I just want to show you this because I don't want to skip back to it mid-example, is it's no different to you watching multiple products. So I talked about bananas. It could be, so let's have a look. I know I'm skipping a lot between screens here, but it's pretty straightforward stuff. So like you saw there, whereas pound dollar, euro dollar, US treasuries, S&P 500, guys, I know this sounds funny, but the reality is there is absolutely no difference to what is going on in the financial market to what's going on in any market in the world. So fruit and veg is a great example because you buy and you sell it. In the previous examples earlier I gave were things like haircuts. Now, you're not really gonna buy a haircut from a shop and sell it to your friend. It's generally typically more a one-way market, whereas fruit and vegetables is a great example, and there's obviously plenty of goods that work in this way, that are two-way markets, and that's why they're great. I can show you a real-life example on how it relates to financial asset prices in terms of supply and demand. So coming back to that previous screen where you saw all of these depth of markets, and you'll be thinking, oh my god, you know, these guys are just watching this go up and down. How did they do it? Guys, I've done it, did it for a long time, and believe me, it's like driving a car. You just get used to it, and it's no different to people that are buying and selling different products in a fruit and vegetable market that you see here. So again, there you saw pound dollar, euro dollar, US treasuries, S&P 500. Guys, it's no different to bananas, apples, cucumbers, potatoes. So whereas you had 4 depth of markets here, guys, these guys, although it's not in tabular format, it's obviously taking place physically, like in a almost an auction type format. Bananas will have a depth of market, apples will have a depth of market, cucumbers will have a depth of market. So I just wanted to make this point before we start the example, because the example is going to be quite long. And essentially we're going to build this up from scratch. So hopefully that was useful, makes a little bit of sense. We're just going to now skip straight on in the next slide to the example. So I'll see you on the next slide, guys.